You are now listening to the Peach Pundit Podcast, where we are expressing our own personal opinions. These views may not reflect the opinions of those whom we may be professionally affiliated.
We have the best bumper music of any podcast in history. I'm just going to go on record and say that right now. And I'm saying that predominantly because I wrote and recorded it.
We have the humblest,
Hey, folks,
the most humble podcast too. So
that's true. Hey, folks, Jason Pye, welcome back to the Peach Pundit Podcast. Scott and Buzz, as always, and we have a special guest, as you might have noticed, Cody Hall, who is the spokesperson for Governor Brian Kemp. Cody, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure, and we'll get to you. We'll get to you real quick. Just want to note to our listeners that you can subscribe to the Peach Pundit Podcast Patreon at patreon.com/peachpundit. There are some tiers in there that you can subscribe to and support the podcast. But Cody, how are things going, man? You guys just weeks away from the primary, and it seems like things are getting pretty interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, we are officially 20 days away from Election Day. Things are going great. The governor's been out on the road. We will hit the road again next week after some fundraising, and we're looking forward to a big victory on May 24th, and then we'll start the real battle. So,
yeah, and it's I don't know. It's been pretty fun to watch the last couple of weeks worth of polling data that's come out. But I'll go to Scott for his questions.
Yeah, so let's start with that, right?
Yeah.
When David Perdue decided to get into this race, he had his reasons. None of them make sense to me personally, but he had his reasons, and he said that the party cannot unite and win in November, and that's why he's running. That being the background for this question, it appears by all the polling data that you guys are going to be able to pull this off. The governor's going to be able to pull this off without a runoff. The polling data is increasing. The lead is increasing. The number between 50% and where the governor is continuing to go up. He's doing very well in the polls. He's making his case. How confident are you in the ability of Brian Kemp to pull the party together, to pull David Perdue back in under the umbrella after May 24th?
we feel very confident. I mean, look, I think once we get to May 24th or the night of May 24th, I think every Georgia Republican and folks that aren't even actual Republicans understand what's at stake in November. Over the last 4 years, we've seen, incredible or unprecedented trials for the governor and state leadership. And, I believe that a large majority of Georgians credit the governor for leading us through that unprecedented time, but also delivering on the things that he told people he would do in 2018. And I think you're looking forward to November and seeing a drastic a difference in a campaign and what Stacey Abrams would do if she were governor. So I think when given the choice between Brian Kemp and Stacey Abrams, I think folks that want a freer, fairer state, they want low taxes, they want their constitutional rights respected. All of that, I think, will lend itself to bringing Republicans, independents together behind the governor. How I put it is that Stacey Abrams is the great unifier among not only Georgia Republicans, but center-right folks, whether they agree with the Republican Party or not.
Yeah,
That's
I guess
certainly. Go ahead, Buzz.
Well, I was just going to pick up on that, Cody. It seems to me Stacey, Scott and I served with her in the legislature. At that time, she was very interested in working with Speaker Ralston on, obviously, she had her positions, but from time to time she would work on pieces of legislation, doing what a good minority leader would do, obtain things that she could for her party. But since she's become a candidate, and I think y'all saw this 3 or 4 years ago, a very different person. And I guess the money and the influence on the Democratic side is much more progressive than it might be when you're just an average, when you're just a member of the Georgia legislature. and since then, over these last 4 years, she's become a Democratic superstar. She's out there, making appearances in Star Trek as president of a unified Earth and all these sorts of things. But I'm wondering if you see what I see. I don't see that she has taken steps to grow her coalition. She got closer than Democrats had in a long time 4 years ago. But I'm wondering if you see what I see, that she has not grown that coalition that might give her a better chance at a rematch.
I would agree. I think if she had conceded the 2018 election and essentially went off and grew her business or pursued other things, I think she would be in a much better position than she currently is. But I mean, I've seen the Oppo books. There's a lot of folks that have. After the 2018 election, she did not, let me rephrase that. She went straight to, we need a DC and Puerto Rican statehood, a doubling down on calls for gun control. She went further to the left after that election, partially, in my opinion, to position herself for a presidential run. And in the event she did not get president, to be at the top of the list for the vice presidential pick, which I think she was closer than most would admit to becoming the vice presidential pick. And I think that's the lane that she saw herself in. But I think she also learned something, that what they were so good at doing in 2018 was nationalizing a governor's race unlike it had ever been done before, at least here in Georgia. Yeah. She was able to take the trips out to Martha's Vineyard, go on a billionaire yachts and do those fundraisers and not hurt her here, because she was able to raise a lot of money, invest in an enormous ground game in a bad year for Republicans. But then also, to your point, Buzz, one of the main ads she ran in 2018 was, I worked with Governor Deal to save the Hope Scholarship. She, while she had, since that election, has made herself out to be this progressive, the poster child of the progressive movement. During that 18 election, she was talking about access to health care, more money for education, working with Governor Deal to save Hope Scholarship, and Brian Kemp is this crazy right-winger. She did kind of position herself in the middle. Now, we were able to get her in some gaffes and paint her in a different light to the electorate, which is why we were ultimately able to win. But this is not an undefined Stacey Abrams this time around. She is very well defined in the minds of voters. Republicans have a special place of hate in their heart for her. And independents have seen someone that was not really interested in Georgia, but was interested in furthering her own career after she refused to concede.
Cody, I have a two-part question here, and if you don't answer me, I'm going to come right back at you. So the first part of my question is this, and it's just looking ahead to November. Why should libertarians, and I'm talking small L, philosophical libertarians, or at the very least, voters who agree with Republicans theoretically on economic issues but don't subscribe to their cultural views, why should they vote for Brian Kemp in November? That's part number one. And part number two is in 2018, it seemed like the Kemp campaign ran a predominantly rural campaign, not spending as much time in Metro Atlanta. Given the census report, the changes in demographics that have taken place since the last census, how do you plan to go after voters of color?
Yeah. I'll start with the first one first. I'm not breaking any news on the podcast, but I mean, we are going to aggressively go after African-American men, Hispanics, and Asian Americans for the main reason that we believe that the issues voters care most about, whether that's inflation, the economy, crime, education, we have a message that appeals directly to those voters, and that's across the spectrum. So we feel like we have a very good chance to invest resources and win some of those votes. You don't have to win all of them. You don't have to win most of them. But in terms of African-American men, if you're talking about 5% or 10% greater vote share for the Republican, that's game over, folks. And I think we have an opportunity to do that because the governor has a record to run on those issues people care about. To your first question on libertarian, look, I think I would start with COVID. There were folks internal as well that cautioned the governor that he was reopening too soon. And he did not listen to both the internal and external critics, including at the time the leader of his own party. I accept the fact that a lot of libertarians would have said, well, Governor, you didn't need to close down at all. And I understand that. I think hindsight's 2020. We may have changed how we address some of those specifics, but when Dr. Toomey and the director of the Georgia Emergency Management Association and the Georgia Hospital Association come to you and say, we don't have enough hospital beds, if it is even a third as bad as what these prognosticators are saying. At that time, Dr. Toomey's advice was, look, Governor, we've got to do at least a short shutdown so that we have time to contract with these hospitals, get extra staffing, and get some of the medical supplies from the feds and from private contractors in order to be ready for whatever this virus holds. So I think I would start with COVID, that the guy, did not back down from his guns and not only opened, but then stayed open. We never went backwards in our executive orders. They continually, gradually, yes, reopened the economy in stages. The other thing I would say, I think the governor, I'd start with tax cuts. He just signed the largest state income tax cut in state history. We got over, there was well over $1 billion left in excess state revenue that the governor said, instead of spending it on X, Y, or Z, let's send it back to taxpayers. I think COVID, his record on taxes, and then his strong stance on when absolutely possible, the governor deferred to local government throughout COVID, whether that was schools, mask mandates. We were getting pulled from both sides there. That early on, everybody was saying we need a statewide mandate to make sure that, you can't drive from Lawrenceville to Suwanee and have different COVID restrictions on businesses. So we did a statewide mandate. Then the locals came back and said, well, now we want local control because you're doing things we don't like. So It was a constant tug and pull there. Obviously, I think if the governor could go back with hindsight and say, I would have tweaked this here and there, he probably would not say that he would have changed anything. But I think knowing what we know now, I think we would have approached a few things a little bit differently.
And also constitutional carry, right? Yeah. That's an issue that appeals to libertarians.
I buried the lead, Scott. I'm sorry.
Switching gears a little bit, and let's talk about Georgia's Republican Party and the Republican Party leadership. Because all accounts, objectively speaking, if you were to put a measurement, any objective measure on the policy measures that came out of this session, huge wins for Republicans policy-wise, huge wins for libertarian-minded people policy-wise, win after win after win after win. The emails that I've received from David Schaefer and the state party, he's the party chairman for those who don't know, but the emails I've received are all still about the 2020 election and claiming credit for the hard work of one candidate in Cobb County. Nothing about the policy wins. Do you share my frustration about that? Because I think the party should be celebrating, because it wasn't just Governor Kemp, but all the legislators that put the work in to make this a really successful legislative session, and we're not hearing a peep from the party.
Yeah, I think it's a disappointing kind of a progression we've seen from the party. Look, I agree. I understand that the state party, per their bylaws, cannot get involved in primaries and they don't endorse. I accept that. But I think whenever you have a General Assembly and a chief executive that deliver on nearly every single conservative reform that was even talked about in a legislative session, like some acknowledgement that Georgia Republicans in general are delivering on what Georgia Republican voters want would make sense. So I think there's absolutely a missed opportunity, because I think one of the things that we saw in 2020 is that the folks who ran on a record, your state house and state senate candidates, they got a majority of the votes. When you looked at folks who did not really run on what they wanted to do, especially the federal candidates, you ran into a lot of issues. So I think that message, at least for us and for the governor, is we've got to be telling people what we're for. Other than looking backwards, I'm not sure what the Georgia GOP is for. I know what the governor's for. I know what the House and Senate are for because they've been very clear. And it's been on those issues, it's been almost every single Republican member voting in favor of those. So it's not like there's a division within the party about how to address these issues. These are overwhelming Republican ideas getting passed and signed by the governor. Again, I'm not asking anybody.
I really feel like Go ahead.
I'm not asking anybody to get involved in
I
primaries,
feel like
but I think that there's at least an acknowledgement of what's gotten done would make sense.
Right. You don't have to get involved in primaries to celebrate policy wins, right? And that's really the thrust of my frustration. We've had huge success this year, and from the mental health bill to the constitutional carry, the tax cut, the tax rebate, all these things, the way the economy is going in Georgia as opposed to other places, the wins just stack up, and the party is supposed to be amplifying that message. And they're doing a disservice, not necessarily just to Governor Kemp, but to every elected Republican in the General Assembly. Their silence is deafening and it hurts.
So, Cody,
Yeah,
I know
I
our
agree.
time with you is almost over. Cody, I know our time with you is almost over. We appreciate you taking the time here. We've talked a lot about the fall campaign and other issues like that, but you do still have a primary. The last couple, closing weeks of that primary campaign. What I guess debates are over, so now it's just hitting the streets and talking to the people. What are you folks going to be focused on the next 20 days?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost thing, I think on May 14th, we're going to have some events where the governor's going to be out on the bus. That week of the 16th, we're going to be out on the bus almost 7 days a week that week. Just really getting the governor out there to make sure people go out and vote. I know that's it's an easy thing to say, but it is important for the governor to make sure that everybody gets out and votes. The other thing is we're going to keep up our paid media campaign. We're going to make sure that folks know what the choice is before them in this primary. And we've done that since late last year, and we're going to continue to do that. But I've been so proud of our team that we have really approached every single aspect of this campaign. We've got incredible grassroots support, not only in volunteers, but we're doing a lot of great door knocking, a lot of direct voter contact that I think is really helping us move the needle. We're in people's mailboxes, we're on the TV sets, and we're going to continue to do that. And I think that that's one of the things that has set our campaign apart from Purdue's is that the governor has worked really hard to raise the resources to run a professional campaign that is really it's really something to see, honestly, to be on the inside of it and feel confident that the campaign's firing on all cylinders. Everybody's doing what they should be doing, and we're making good progress. So we're just trying to bring it home and not let our foot off the gas.
Yep.
Well, certainly the hiring of Mark Short, who used to work for Vice President Pence, is a sign of how seriously you guys are taking the race in November, and it's going to be one of the funner things to watch this fall as it progresses and after you guys win the primary, because I think that's pretty much a done deal at this point. But obviously the voters will speak on May 20th. But Cody,
24th.
24th, sorry. Cody, thanks for joining us, and please send along our hello to Governor Kemp. And as a point of personal privilege, I have some sincere policy-based disagreements with Governor Kemp, but he has always been an incredibly nice guy when I've interacted with him. So please tell him I said hello as well.
Absolutely. And thank you all for letting the B team come on tonight. Happy to come back anytime. Appreciate the time.
Yep.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Cody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. So we will we'll go back into the regular part of the podcast by noting there was a change in leadership of Peach Pundit this week, or last week, I should say. As Scott has noted in a post at peachpundit.com, I handed over the editor-in-chief title to him, and when I called him on Thursday to give him and he answered the phone, I said, "Hello, editor-in-chief," and he said, "Why are you cussing at me?" And this was something I had been planning on doing anyway. For those of you who are not in the loop, and we did mention this last week on the podcast, that I have moved to the Commonwealth of Virginia. For the past almost 7 years, my job has been for the past almost 10 years, my job has been based in the DC area, and the constant commuting back and forth had not so much a problem in the past 2 years, but had taken a little bit of a strain on me. And as I got approached 40 and got into 40, I realized I hated doing it. And then COVID pretty much forced me to drive to DC monthly. Well, it didn't force me to, but I did drive to DC monthly. And I started getting really tired of that. And I also had some changes in my personal life that kind of necessitated the move. So Scott is the new editor-in-chief. So Mr. Editor-in-chief, I will hand it over to you for a moment before we move on with our regularly scheduled podcast.
I feel like the teenage boy who just got his driver's license and somebody handed me the keys. And all the emotion that goes with that, right? Don't drive this thing into the ditch. Be careful. The freedom is overwhelming, but I want to be careful. I don't want to drive it into the ditch. And that's the big thing, right? So thank you, Jason. We wouldn't be here, and this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. We wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for Jason Pye.
Yep.
Jason had a vision to revive the long dormant Peach Pundit, which is one of the preeminent name brands in political politics and punditry in Georgia. And under that umbrella, I just hope to be a good steward of it and not mess it up. That's like the big thing, right? But I have some ideas that we're expanding our roster of contributors. We've already brought 2 brand new ones on. You can read their introductions. They're deep political insiders, some congressional staffers, campaign consultants, people who are in touch with a lot of people who are in the room when decisions are made. We're going to bring them on as contributors and continue to make this the preeminent source of your Georgia political news.
And I'll still be kicking around as Scott noted, a DC correspondent.
It's important because we have Georgians serving Georgia and our country in DC.
Yeah.
And there's no better qualified person in my mind to tell us what's really happening than Jason Pye. So we're keeping Jason. We're definitely keeping Jason.
I will make note to go add alerts to each member of the delegation's pages on the congressional record, so I can be notified when they say something stupid on the floor.
Let's do that.
In addition to still being around as a contributor, I'll also still be basically running the podcast for all intents and purposes, which basically means I get to edit it because nobody else wants to do it. So going to our regularly scheduled podcast. So I understand there have been more debates. In fact, all gubernatorial candidates in Georgia debated recently, and which means Scott's beloved Kandiss Taylor got to share the stage with Governor Kemp and former Senator David Perdue. So
yes. Scott,
I'll kick it off with you talking about the debate.
Well, first, I guess the big takeaway is there's some guy named Tom running for governor.
Yeah.
He was on the stage too. He's not the most informed dude, but he had complimentary things to say about Brian Kemp while he was criticizing him. He kept saying, he's done a pretty good job, but he's done a pretty good job, but he's done a pretty good job. And that's what I thought. Tom thought Brian Kemp was a really good choice for governor, is what I thought. So we had Tom. There were a couple of key moments during the debate. Number one is that David Perdue was not given much time to really go after his only message, which is about the 2020 election. He every question he tried to make it about that, and he tried to lay at the feet of Brian Kemp the defeat of Donald Trump. Catherine Davis was she was well spoken, but it was interesting. At one point, the governor was allowed to ask a question of any candidate, and he chose Catherine Davis, and he asked her, "Can we all get unified after May 24th?" And she's like, "Nah, I don't think so."
Yeah.
And the reason why is because, no, I don't really think so. And the reason why is because you're not actually doing enough about abortion, which I guess we'll talk about later. But it was interesting because I was in the room in the governor's office when he signed the heartbeat bill. And standing behind him was Catherine Davis. She was in the room supporting Brian Kemp when he signed the heartbeat bill. So I found that to be interesting. It's these candidates are trying to, they're flailing around like that floppy inflatable guy in front of the car dealership. They're trying anything they can, and nothing is sticking. Did you see it, Buzz?
I did. I watched it, and I think your assessment is good. On the unity question, I found it interesting that, well, I guess the moderators returned to that later and said, will you vote for the nominee, and kind of asked them all. And when it got to Kandiss Taylor, she said, well, I'm not going to have to worry about that because I'm going to be the nominee, which I thought was pretty interesting of her. But I think, I mean, she was just a mess. I mean, she was just rambling all over the place. I think she was trying to cram 20 minutes of discussion into the 30 or 60 seconds that she had to answer questions, and was just all over the place. And I think, guns, Jesus,
Kandiss Taylor.
Yeah, guns, Jesus, and babies are in good shape, but her campaign is not.
Jason, at one point during the debate, number one, she called Biden a pedophile.
Yeah.
So she's a QAnon person.
She actually said that Joe Biden was a pedophile.
Yes.
And then she went on to slam homeschool parents by saying that because schools had been shut down for weeks or months in whatever case, and the children were required to go to remote learning, that the parents of those children were molesting and abusing them, and the teachers couldn't intervene.
Yeah, and I think, Scott, if I could just for a second, Scott, I think that is a particularly vicious attack that in the early days of the pandemic, a Harvard professor wrote a big, long article about how it's well known that homeschool parents are pedophiles and abuse their children sexually. There's zero evidence of that, zero evidence that the homeschool parents are any more likely to abuse their children than any other group of parents. And here's Kandiss Taylor embracing this horrific attack on homeschool parents, in some sort of roundabout way to attack Brian Kemp. It was outrageous.
For those who can't watch right now, I put a timer on it, and for the last 35 seconds, Jason Pye's mouth has been open and completely slack-jawed. Yeah. So go, Jason, go.
I am very rarely rendered speechless.
I'm not speechless. I'll tell you. I have always thought
I got nothing. I got nothing. God have mercy.
I have thought for a long time her campaign was kind of cute. It's kind of funny. It's kitschy. The slogan is outrageously But this has crossed a line into what I think is dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. She's propagating amongst her followers, and she has followers, not necessarily supporters or voters, but she's created a following.
Yeah.
And she's preaching this message that's anti-liberty. It has no basis in reality.
Yeah.
And is fundamentally un-Republican.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous. And so, for those of you, I've been I've been soft on Kandiss Taylor because I don't see her as a threat. But when she says things like that, and she's serious, there was no joking. There was no hint of humor. This is what she believes. And that if, as governor, she would be interfering in the rights of parents to educate their children. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
I've got two quick thoughts. The first one, and I didn't watch the debate, and because I'm out of market now. So if it's you guys are gonna have to let me know if I can find it online or something like that.
Georgia Public Broadcasting has it on their website.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So the first thing I'll say is, this is probably not something she came up with on her own. Buzz, you mentioned the Harvard professor, but it makes me wonder what QAnon messaging board is saying this.
Yeah.
And how widely this belief is held amongst the sort of illiberal crazies that are running around the American body politic.
Right.
This second thing is, I realize my place in this podcast is to sort of be the classically liberal libertarian to push the envelope, and I have views that are. Buzz, Scott, and I would say we probably agree on economic issues almost across the board. It's cultural issues is typically where the three of us differ. And I have always been a big supporter of school choice and homeschooling. And I don't have kids of my own, but I cannot think of a more in the effort to make sure we stay PG, bat poop crazy things that could have been said.
Yeah.
Guano. Guano style crazy.
Good Lord. I cannot believe someone would have said that and been serious about it.
Yeah.
That is,
but I guess to me,
bad.
See, she is dangerous, and Scott's right, and I agree with that. But in reality, I mean, the big takeaway from all these debates that Kemp and Perdue have had, and then these others, I just don't see that any of these folks have really laid a glove on Kemp. I think nothing has happened in these debates that has changed the trajectory. Kemp is his polls keep coming out that show him over 50% and increasing, approaching 60% in the most recent poll that was released. And I just don't see anything that happened there is going to change the trajectory of this race.
We'll come back to that in a second, but the one thing I do want to point out is that, with because I can't get away from this right now, with Kandiss Taylor, I want to. She may be harmless in a governor's race. I don't know where she lives in the state. Yeah. She may be harmless in a governor's race, but if she lives in a congressional district where a seat could come open, she's built some name ID at this point. Yeah. Maybe not a lot, but I would imagine if she decides to run for Congress, she might have a little bit of a competitive edge. And whereas in Georgia's, and look, I mean, I still consider myself a Georgian. I lived there for 40 years of my life. I would say we're a state that already sent, she who must not be named to Congress. We don't want to send another one.
Yeah. Her evil twin.
God, yeah, no joke. And you're right, and Scott's right. Like it was a little bit adorable and even endearing to see her, some of the things she had done in her campaign. That campaign ad still makes me think like it could have been written by the guys from South Park. But yeah, God, it's dangerous. But since Buzz mentioned it, there has been new polling in the governor's race since we last talked. Most recently, we had I think the survey, the WXIA and Survey USA poll, the Fox 5 Insider Advantage poll, and then finally another one that came out, I believe, just yesterday from ARW Strategies. And the polls show clearly that Governor Kemp has surpassed 50%. He's at WXIA Survey USA have him at 56%. Fox 5 Insider Advantages has him at 54%. And the ARW Strategies poll shows him at 59.4%. So clearly this race has very much tilted in Brian Kemp's favor to the point that he looks like he's going to avoid a runoff. And I think between the three of us, there was never any question that Governor Kemp was going to win this thing. But the question was he going to be able to do it without a runoff? And it appears that may be the case. Buzz, what do you read into these polls?
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think, the succession of those polls, the lead keeps increasing. I know there are different polls with different methods, et cetera, but it is interesting that they show Kemp's lead's growing and Kemp putting distance between him and 50%, which I think, has got to make them feel good. And I think really, we were talking earlier with Cody Hall about, the issue came up of unifying the party. A solid win on May 24th will go a long way to helping unify the party. If it's close, if it's, if you're in a few thousand votes or whatever of a runoff, there's going to be all this, what if stuff. If it's a butt whooping, that just helps. I think that helps Kemp unify the party. And, David Perdue has already signaled that he said he would come out and endorse Brian Kemp and help him campaign. I don't know, watching these debates, I don't know that Kemp wants him hanging around, but at least he's not, he's saying, he'll line up behind him and help him out. So I don't know. I think this is all good news for Kemp, and if he can deliver a convincing win on May 24th, that'll be a good thing for him and the GOP.
Scott, but before you go into the polling, a couple things I want to know. That's 5 of the last 5 polls that have come out of Georgia show Kemp with more than 50%. Mm-hmm. The second thing, that's point, and then the question I want you to ponder while you're thinking about your thoughts on this is, can Donald Trump accept this outcome, and would he endorse Kemp if when Kemp wins this thing? I mean, it's inevitable at this point, but go ahead, Scott.
It's not inevitable. Anything could happen between May 24th. So I feel confident that Kemp will win, but without a runoff. But I'm not. It's not guaranteed. So let's not put the cart before the horse. Secondly, I am out of the business of trying to predict what Donald Trump's going to do. Like, I've been wrong so many times that I have decided to take my ball and go home when it comes to predicting what Donald Trump's going to do. I can't predict. Who can, really? He has no predictable characteristics to lean on to make a prediction like that. Can he? I don't know, based upon how harsh he's been, even while he was in the White House, criticizing Kemp for opening Georgia. You know, clearly these two men have not been on the same page for a long time. And I don't know that he can backtrack. And he's been the king of backtracking, right? He's also said many times, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant.
Yeah.
And people believe that. I think it creates a lot of problems for Trump when he runs again in a couple years on whether or not he can win Georgia. And I think that the average Republican voter still very much likes Donald Trump, but I can't predict what he's going to do. But looking at the polling data, here's my take. For months now, at least since January, I have said that the best time for David Perdue to drop out and endorse Brian Kemp was months ago, and the second best time is now. Well, the early voting has started, and the time for that is over. And it's time for David Perdue to head to the woodshed to get his ass whooped. And that's what's happening right now. And that's what the polls show, that he's going to get his ass whooped, just like John Ossoff whooped him. He's going to get whooped. And he's going to get whooped by a governor who has a stellar record and is running on that. And is saying, look at what I've done, and this is what I will do. And David Perdue, the only thing he could do is throw his hands in the air and say, I lost because of you, which isn't true. David Perdue lost because David Perdue ran a crappy campaign. We criticized his campaign before he lost for being less than stellar. And his campaign for governor has been less than stellar from the beginning, gaffe after gaffe after gaffe, coming out against 7,500 jobs, coming out against every possible good thing that Republicans actually like. It's not a winning strategy, and he's not a winning candidate.
Yeah.
And so go get your ass whooped, David Perdue. It's time for that to happen because you wouldn't drop out and endorse.
And
Brian
here I was under the impression that we were trying to keep a PG rating on this podcast because we had the governor's spokesperson join us, and Scott has single-handedly boosted us to PG-13. Buzz,
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, you asked a great question, Jason, about what does Trump do, and I think it kind of depends on how his various endorsements do around the country. Now, look, last night, admittedly, Trump had a pretty good night. A lot of his candidates won. He sort of snatched J.D. Vance from third place to first in Ohio in that Senate race. So I think, we're going to see how it plays out over the next few weeks as primaries in many other states. Trump has endorsed hundreds of people all across the country. And so I think if his endorsements are going strong and he's and a lot of his candidates are winning, he may not feel the need that he needs to bury the hatchet with Brian Kemp. But I think, this is a big one. He has invested a lot in Georgia trying to topple Perdue Kemp and Raffensperger especially. And it looks like we're headed to a runoff in the SOS race with Brad Raffensperger in it, and it looks like Kemp has kind of sailed to a re-election chance with with Abrams. So we'll see. But I'm not holding my breath for a bury the hatchet moment here.
And I don't think you should. But that's. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I know our next topic is going to be particularly interesting. And Scott's already referenced the heartbeat bill in Georgia. And as everyone, unless you've been living under a rock, and believe me, I think some of us wish we had been living under a rock since Monday, especially if you're anywhere close to Washington, D.C., where I currently am. There was a leak at the Supreme Court of a draft opinion. I want to emphasize the word draft or the phrase draft opinion here, authored by Justice Samuel Alito that would overturn the Supreme Court's holding in the 1973 Roe case and then the 1992 Casey case, and return the issue of abortion to the states. The issue that has Republicans are focusing on this leak that occurred where it got basically given to a reporter at Politico. We don't know who leaked it, at least not yet, but Chief Justice Roberts intends to find out who leaked it. It's an enormous, egregious breach of protocol, brazen as well, for someone to do this. And then secondly, it has opened up a can of worms in terms of national politics about abortion, that potentially Roe and Casey could be overruled. This one is, I'm going to let Scott go first on this one because I have my own personal opinion on this issue, and I've never been quite super comfortable talking about my view on abortion, but I will today. But Scott, you go first.
So there's all this talk about how Roe v. Wade's ending abortion is, I think, overblown. And I don't want to downplay the importance of overturning Roe, but I read the opinion, and nothing in the opinion prevents abortion from happening in the United States. It simply puts the authority for abortion regulation or laws or prohibitions back into the hands of elected members of various legislatures. And I think that's where it belongs. But there are a lot of people out there saying this will end abortion in the United States, and it doesn't. There will be a whole host of new fights that will be fought in battlegrounds around the country, including here in Georgia. But I think the major implication for Georgia's heartbeat bill is it's currently enjoined, and it's a 6-week ban on, once you get past 6 weeks and a fetal heartbeat can be detected, then the state recognizes the individuality of that human being in the womb and has conferred upon it rights as a human being. So that means it has the right to live. And before that, there are legislators, I'm sure, who are chomping at the bit to go and address whether or not life begins at conception, which I'm sure will happen in Georgia. Somebody's going to bring that bill. But that's my take. I don't, the people who are freaking out about abortion ending, even in Georgia under the heartbeat bill, you can still get an abortion. You just can't abort somebody who's been recognized as a separate human being under that law.
Buzz?
Yeah, I think this is monumental. It's overturning. We have to set some ground rules here. Let's assume. We know that this is a real brief. We know that Justice Alito wrote it. What we don't know is, have any justices changed their mind since then, or what what may have changed even in this draft. This was from February. There might have been a lot could have happened, but let's assume.
Can I just point out? I think that Alito probably wrote this a decade or more ago.
yeah,
and had it in the drawer ready to go.
Yeah.
And said, "Here, guys, I'll save you the work. I've already done it. Yeah. Here, look at this."
Right. So let's assume that this stands, and this is pretty much the opinion that is written, and other justices weigh in on it. This is the culmination of really a 50-year effort by religious conservatives and the Republican Party and the Federalist Society to reshape the courts, and for the pro-life movement. all their work for 50 years is to this moment. And really, it's just, as Scott pointed out, this is the beginning of the battle, because now you go back to the 50 states to adjudicate this on a state by state basis. And I do think, I think Scott made another great point that these types of issues, it's not easy for a judge to say this is to draw these sorts of lines that need to be drawn in these sorts of issues, because it's not cut and dried. It's very, very complicated and emotional issues here that we're dealing with abortion. And I think, as I've been thinking about it, where most American people are on this debate is not where I am, and is certainly not where the pro-choice advocates are. They are, according to most studies and looks at this, the American people want to allow abortion in the first trimester, in the second trimester with restrictions. Where they differ from Democrats is some Democrats want to take it all the way. So I hope that what happens is this becomes a political debate, and eventually we arrive at a consensus. It won't be where I want it to be as a pro-life person, but it's also not going to be where the most ardent supporters of abortion is going to be. It's going to be somewhere in between. And for most Americans, that's going to be just fine. And then we can, I think a lot of good can come from this. Fights over the Supreme Court won't be as important because Roe doesn't hang in the balance anymore. But it is going to place a lot more pressure on state legislative races because that's where these battles are going to be fought.
So, couple quick things. I do want to point out that the reason this was a draft opinion is because after a case is heard, the justices take a vote, and so they had a majority at the time. The opinion did not take in any feedback from dissenters into account, so it will almost certainly be changed because he'll want to Justice Alito, assuming there's still a conservative majority to overturn Roe and Casey still stands, he will almost certainly want to respond to dissenting views. And secondly, I should have led off with this, that the Chief Justice Robert Wood, I guess the court itself did respond and say that this was authentic. There will be a second vote that's taken, and then ultimately the court will issue its opinion in any dissents or concurrences that come along with it. Or there will almost certainly be dissents and concurrences with a case this far-reaching and that has this much of an implication on national policy and politics. But I want to note. So I do a weekly newsletter, and we don't work on this issue here. In fact, in my entire professional life, I've never specifically worked on abortion. And I'll read from what I wrote for my newsletter, and it's basically this. And you thought political divide and hyperpartisanship couldn't get any worse. It's really hard to overstate the political earthquake of overturning Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. It's not something that can be overstated, regardless of which side of the aisle or the issue you stand on. The implications are far-reaching for women's health, to public policy, to privacy, to procedure in the Senate because of the threat of the filibuster, or getting rid of the filibuster, in the midterm election, to the public's view of the Supreme Court. Public opinion, as Buzz noted, is clearly in support of keeping Roe and Casey in place, but the leak of the draft opinion, abortion barely. But before the leak of the draft opinion, abortion barely registered as a issue on voters' minds. I have friends on both sides of this issue, as evidenced by talking to two people who are pro-life. I have friends who are pro-choice. I also have friends and family near and dear to my heart who have had abortions. Regardless of someone's position on abortion, I tend to respect their opinions because I find them to be deeply held, and they come from the heart. And it's always been the extremes on both sides that have really annoyed me on this issue. It's not as simple. It's not as simple as returning this issue to the states because of how restrictive some states are when it comes to abortion. At 6 weeks, some women don't even know they're pregnant. That said, I've never really felt comfortable with labeling myself as pro-choice or pro-life. I would say I probably default pro-choice, but that's incredibly nuanced, because I can see both sides of the issue, but at the end of the day, I tend to respect the privacy that comes with doctor-patient relationships. And if a woman decides to end her pregnancy, I don't feel like I have any say in that. And secondly, I'm a guy. It's just, I think this duopoly of pro-choice, pro-life just always really bugs me. And this is not something, like I said, that I've worked on, but this is something, regardless of what a decision is reached, will have implications far past abortion, and it will bleed over into other public policy issues, because it is going to be difficult for these guys who already have these guys and gals in Congress who already have a difficult enough time because of the political atmosphere right now getting along to get along. It's going to make it worse, and I fear that's going to have that's going to infect every other aspect of public policy, even as something as simple as basic government appropriations. Scott?
I'm sensitive to that. And Alito wrote in his opinion about how the court cannot be swayed by public opinion or by what may happen as a result of the decision. And I think that's an important point to drive home. And the reason why that's important is because the court is the final arbiter of our individual rights. And if the majority of people feel like something is opposed to, whatever that something may be, is opposed to the right of an individual, then the court has an obligation to ignore the majority and the public emotion or sentiment about that issue. They have a duty and responsibility to protect the right of the individual. In Georgia's case, the heartbeat bill was designed specifically. Our Georgia heartbeat bill was designed specifically to take on Casey, not necessarily Roe, but Casey. And the reason why is because in Casey there was a ruling that the states hadn't fully recognized the individuality of the unborn child. Well, the heartbeat bill does that. It takes some novel approaches and says, for example, once a child is in utero, that individual human being has all the rights of a Georgian. They can be eligible for tax credits, for child adoptions, and things of that nature. Child support. So even if the father is uncooperative with the expectant mother, she can still get child support with the child still being in utero. So that's where, we can have a more robust conversation at some point about why I'm pro-life. And the reason why is because I believe it is the role of government to protect the right of the individual. And when does life begin, I think, is a question that's answered by science. And so the government has an obligation to protect a human being from having their life taken. And so that's where I stand and why I stand there. And we get our rights because we are human. Our founding documents say that all men are created equal and that are endowed by inalienable rights by our Creator. And if you're not a God-fearing person or you don't believe in God, then another way of saying that is you have rights by the nature of your humanity. Yeah. Because you are human, you have rights. And so when does life begin is a question that's been answered by science. Heartbeat, individual DNA, individual blood type is available at that point, at that 6-week mark. That's a human being, and it has rights. And one of those rights is to live. And so the role of government there is to protect those rights. And so that's where That's where I think the disconnect and the debate needs to happen. And for those of us who are pro-life, we need to be focusing on that. Mm-hmm. We lose people when we talk about the faith message. Yeah. We lose people when we talk about it from a moral superiority. But those three questions, when does life begin? Where do you get your rights from? And what is the role of government? Are the three questions that we need to be talking about if you're pro-life and advocating for abortion restrictions.
Interestingly enough, that was a question. I forgot who asked me this, but somebody asked me this the other day and asked me if you were a Republican staffer right now, or say you worked as a consultant on a campaign, a federal campaign where this issue was coming up, what would be your messaging? I said I would not use a religious-based message at all.
Yeah.
I would focus.
I never did. I had people attack me telling me that I was pro-life because of my religious views, and it wasn't. It was based on those three questions. And when I remember I was in a college class at Kandiss State, and I had a very pro-choice guy arguing with me, and he goes, "Well, you're a Christian." And I was like, "It has nothing to do with it."
Yeah.
And I walked him through it, and he never heard the argument that way before, but it made sense to him. And so, yeah, I think we do ourselves a disservice if we just say this is the word of God. I'm God-fearing. I'm a Christian. I love the Bible. I love Jesus, and I love guns, and I love babies. So at the end of the day, I believe the way that the religious right believes, but I've approached it in a way that makes more sense to me as a logical reasoned person.
It was interesting. This whole discussion reminds me of why I never ran for any office.
Yeah.
And because I didn't want to. I knew I would never get elected because I had views that were on three main issues that were very different from the stereotypical Republican. And the first one, because I would have to run as a Republican, the stereotypical Republican is opposed to illegal immigration, and I don't have a problem with it. The stereotypical Republicans opposes same-sex marriage. I just don't have a problem with it. I strongly support it. And third is like if you guys named any issue in the public policy world, this is the one I care the absolute least about. and like I said, I've defaulted to pro-choice, but that's not I would say my pro-choice view is not strong. I just think it's an incredibly complicated, as Buzz said, it's an incredibly complicated and emotional decision.
Yeah.
That is I don't think it's so simple. And when it's in a case-by-case view, I don't think it's very simple to sit there and say, well, you have to have this because this child's going to grow up in poverty or this child's going to do X, Y, or Z. And I don't want to have this drawn out any more than it already is, because I think the three of us, my opinion is not, I like I said, I care the least about this of the three of us. But, disagreement, if disagreement as we might have it, I respect you guys' view. And I'm not even going to necessarily say that the two of you are wrong. It's just, this is an incredibly complicated and emotional issue. So,
I agree with that.
But what's not incredibly complicated and emotional is our mutual dislike of she who must not be named. And we've yes. talked about. You like that segue?
Yes, that was good.
That's a very good segue.
Yes.
Earlier we were talking about Kandiss Taylor and her calling Joe Biden a pedophile and parents who homeschool their children pedophiles. And there's been this recent debate over in public policy over groomers. But Marjorie Taylor Greene apparently had someone who in the past has said that it's okay for people to have relationships with people who are not of the age of majority. Yeah. They're theoretic. I don't know if he was there in support of her campaign or not, but I'm venturing to guess he probably was.
He's hanging out backstage. Let's name him. Go ahead, Jason. So everybody knows.
Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah. We probably should take a second to describe who he is, because he's kind of vanished, over the last couple of years. But right, I mean, he was a big provocateur
because of his Twitter ban.
He was what?
Because of his Twitter ban.
Yeah.
He was banned on Twitter, and he kind of went away.
Yeah, I mean, it's a provocateur who just showed up to make trouble.
He was banned on Twitter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, he was banned on Twitter because of his advocacy for grooming and pedophilia between young boys and men. And his words, I'm going to paraphrase, but only slightly, are shocking.
Yes.
And these are not my words. These are Milo's words. Milo has said that young men can be guided by older men into adulthood and feel love and security from those older men. And that is that had been the end of Milo. We hadn't seen him around. We hadn't heard from him around until Marjorie Taylor Greene decides to bring him to the debate for her reelection campaign against Jennifer Strahan and others. And I am, like Jason, speechless.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this was like, by the way, whenever I jokingly refer to David Perdue, Trump being David Perdue's daddy, that's actually where that came from, because Milo is the one who called Trump daddy. So I think seriously though, but yeah, no, I mean, look, I once again did not watch the debate, and obviously I have a preference in this race. It's anyone who is not named Marjorie Taylor Greene winning that primary. But you know, the fact that she brings this, provocateur and very controversial figure to a debate is not.
It's on brand.
She either just has really bad, it's completely on brand. Like, I have this is a legit question. Are either the people who work in her, who directly in her Washington, D.C. office, or who run her campaign, complete idiots? Because you not only show up at a white nationalist event, you bring a guy who has advocated essentially for grooming.
Yeah.
To your campaign debate. Like, can you guys not Google?
I know some of those folks, and they're good people. And it's sad. If I were them, I'd be looking for work.
Yeah.
I would not work for her. And in leaving her office, I think they'd find ready employment.
I don't. At this point, I don't know, Scott.
You stay much longer. The longer you stay, the worse those chances get.
Well, I can't argue with that. I will say that I know that some people who listen to the podcast who are good people have relations with folks there, familial relations and not only just professional. And I will say that they deserve our prayer. And I say that in all seriousness, because they're in a tough spot, right? They have families to feed, they have mortgages to pay, and they've been tasked with an impossible situation other than to bail, and almost to a point where you're in a no-win situation. So, Marjorie, let's just run back the outrages just in the last few months with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay. I mean, this just being the latest in a long list, including, but not limited to, her attacks on the Catholic Church, saying that they're run by demons and Satan for helping refugees who have attained their status in the United States legally, in addition to illegal aliens. Saying attending a white nationalist event, not in just one place, but many places. Yeah. Her continued anti-Semitism, over and over again, she provides reasons to embarrass every Georgian, not just the 14th district residents and voters. She's embarrassing all of us. And I don't know how you overcome incumbency advantage, especially since during her debate, she very flatly said that Kevin McCarthy has promised her that when he's speaker, she's going to get committee assignments.
Better committee assignments. She was on Education and Labor and Budget, which Education and Labor will be named Education in the Workplace, or Workforce. But I mean, what else are you going to put her on? You going to put her on a committee like Financial Services? Because God help us.
Yeah.
Well, isn't she not on committees right now? That's part of the reason why.
Yeah, she's not on any committees right now. But he promised her that it wasn't just that she get committee assignments. He promised her better committee assignments.
Right. Why would he do that, Jason?
He wants to
John
become
Boehner
speaker.
described this in his book.
He wants to become speaker.
Yeah, no.
And why have somebody out there railing against him every day?
No, Buzz is exactly right. But John Boehner actually talks about this in his book about how when Michelle Bachmann demanded a seat on Ways and Means, he basically downplayed it, and then finally I can't remember if I think she actually got the seat. I can't remember off the top of my head. But my point to it is he realized she had a bigger microphone by going on Sean Hannity's show or going on some other conservative right wing talk show hosts, and she would just sit there and rail against John Boehner. And Green might not be able to get on someone like Sean Hannity. I actually don't know if she has or not. I don't listen to talk radio, but she has a bigger mouthpiece, and she can make a Speaker Kevin McCarthy's life pretty miserable.
Yeah.
Buzz, anything else?
It's just the MTG clown show continues, and I pray that the voters of the 14th district are tired of it, and they watching that debate. We had Jennifer Strahan. She seems like a very competent conservative person who would represent the values that MTG claims to represent as far as conservatism, and actually get it done. So but if you don't like her, there are watching that debate. There are other folks who seem reasonably competent and aren't interested in, seem focused on the 14th district. Vote for one of those people.
Yeah. And finally, our last topic before we call it done for the evening is early voting numbers. And this one seems to these numbers seem to be pretty good, especially if you're a Republican. Through Tuesday, 32,318 people had voted. It was a record first day of early voting. And so of those through Tuesday, 34,055 Republicans had, Republican ballots had been pulled, and 25,209 Democratic primary ballots have been pulled. 528 nonpartisan. Honestly, why even vote if you're going to pull a nonpartisan? I don't understand. Buzz, what do you make of the early voting numbers? And do you think the advantage, about 9,000 votes, shows any Republican strength going into November?
I don't think we should read too much into that, because there are contested primaries on the Democratic side, but not for governor and not for senator. And those are the ones that, no offense to candidates for Secretary of State, Lieutenant Governor, etc. They're not going to drive a lot of people to the polls. It's governor and Senate, and Republicans have those very hotly contested races on those sides. So I think Republicans should be careful about getting too excited about those numbers at this point.
Scott?
I think the only thing it shows is that.
Wait, is that Joey? Is that Joey barking in the background?
Joey's barking at the Roomba that just went off. So yes, we have to run the Roomba daily because Joey sheds a lot. So Bernie's mountain dogs shed. Newsflash. Roombas work. And Joey is not happy that the Roomba is.
And sponsorships are available at peachpundit.com. So.
Patreon.com/peachpundit.
Yes.
Yeah. Roomba, we could use the sponsorship. I think what it shows is that Republicans are engaged. Mm-hmm. They've made up their minds, largely. I haven't on several races. I posted a blog about that, so go read it. But I think that what it shows at this point is that Republicans are more engaged. Mm-hmm. We have I think it's being driven by the Kemp versus Purdue race, and people are just wanting to go ahead and get it out of the way because it's important to them. And that's why the numbers are higher on the Republican side. I think it's also, it's higher than traditionally because people are more comfortable with early voting. And I think it's good to see a higher Republican turnout because of the damage the Stop the Steal campaign has done amongst average Republican voters and their enthusiasm. So to see that enthusiasm return is a good thing. It's still very early. A lot can happen, but I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it. Is there anything else we missed, guys?
No. That is what we have.
That is what we have.
I think that was an A+ show, gentlemen. Well done. Thank you, Cody Hall, for being on. You guys did
if
well.
we may say so ourselves.
You'll have a 3% bump in your pay. Yeah.
Can I get a raise? Can I
Yes, I just said I'm going to offer you a 3% bump in your pay.
Which is, I get paid nothing, so nothing times 3% is 0. Okay.
You ungrateful jerk.
Hey, I'm just relieved that Scott in
Just bumped
charge.
your pay 3 points.
I'm just relieved that Scott being in charge now as editor in chief was not a hostile takeover. So that's a relief to me. So.
Yeah, I actually, funny thing about it is I thought about that when Scott did his blog post. I was like, I hope nobody thinks I was replaced because like hostilely replaced.
I tried to make it clear that you decided to do that, and because it wasn't me, because I was like, why are you cursing at me? So.
No. Yeah, this is actually something I had intended to do for a while, and finally got around to doing it because of the, and frankly, it was prompted by the podcast the night before, where Scott outed me as a resident of the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's like and we talked about. Funny thing about it is I actually called Tamar Hollerman and told her about it. And she goes, wait. Does that mean you're now a former Georgian? I was like, yes, Tamar. That means I am now.
Poor lady. You've given her so much grief over the years. That poor lady.
I really look. Tamar's a friend, and it was funny until it became like an annoying thing because like I walk in the Freedom Works office like a day or two after it was that blog post that Tamar wrote on Political Insider went up, and it was like taped to my door, and I was just like I was, and like Tamar worked across the hall at the time because they were in Hall of the States and we were in Hall of the States, and we were on like literally on the same floor. We'd see each other leaving the office some days, and like I remember like emailing her and said thanks for this.
And on that note,
we are officially done. Thanks, folks, for listening or watching. Make sure
one thing. Sorry, Sam Thomas, we didn't mention you earlier.
Oh,
Yeah.
But Sam Thomas, our one and only Patreon supporter, go to patreon.com/peachpundit to join Sam Thomas, our one and only, so that he's not the one and only anymore. We need your support.
Yes.
You know you're entertained by this. Please help us out.
Yes, please do, because it helps us defray costs that we incur while doing the podcast, and it'll also help us eventually buy some better equipment. So with that, folks, thanks so much for listening, watching. Make sure you check us out online, Twitter, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and wherever else fine podcasts are bought and sold. So appreciate it. Take care. Have a good one. We'll see you next week. Later.
Next week.